Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Coaches Parley Saturday night. It's going to be a good night for hockey. It's the first week of the NHL back in session. But before we get into that, let me introduce my scoring line one NHL 94 Retro Edition, starting with playing center ice, Ryan Wood from all the way Toronto, Ontario. Mike Stackhouse playing the right side with the flowing locks out in Saskatchewan. And my D-line one, Harry Mahesh, he got demoted because he just got back from the gym. And our most well-dressed man, the right defenseman, Sean. Well, thanks for joining me, boys.
This is usually what I wore when I was on a hockey team.
Was that the regalia you had to wear probably behind the mic back in those days?
Did we have to suit up? Oh, yeah. Yeah, for whatever reason, even though no one could see us. We were the most well-dressed people in the crowd.
That's what I was going to say. Most well-dressed people, and you probably have a face that was good enough for television, too. We just didn't get there, Sean. Nah, he says we'll go on there. We're watching some hockey. It's the first week back in the NHL. Let's quickly touch base on something that happened a couple of weeks back. I mean, no one was surprised to hear how Canada was playing 41-4 going into the gold medal, goals for, goals against. What is it about the fact that Canada, when it comes to a one-game winner-take-all against the Americans, we are now 0 for 5 in the last 11 or 12 years now it is. Why can't we rise to the occasion, boys?
I think it is a lot to do with chemistry. USA Hockey's national development team plays a huge part for this. And a lot of those players that play together are very familiar with each other starting from when they're 16, 17 years old. I don't know the exact numbers of how many players that were on the U.S. team played through that national development program. But just the chemistry involved, I think, just sets the difference maker. I mean, don't get me wrong, the games are good quality games, but those kids have all been put into a structure and a system, and they know it like the back of their hand, and they played it to a T.
But hasn't Hockey Canada done the same thing? I mean, U16, U15, Ivan Halenka's, Team West, Team Ontario, they all buy into the same programs, Mike, don't they?
Yeah, to some degree. I think I'm going to agree with Ryan to some degree. I think that there's a bit of a chemistry factor, although in this particular tournament, I don't know that chemistry is a factor because these guys were together for almost 2 months. Like they were in quarantine in Edmonton, and I think everybody was hungry. The boys hadn't played any hockey all year, and I think in this particular setup, what happened was Canada was in a pretty easy pool. They weren't pushed. There was no adversity the entire tournament. All of a sudden they got some. They gave up the first goal in the gold medal game. Then they were down 2-0, and then they run into a hot goalie and couldn't score. And I think in a best of 3, they probably win the next 2 games. I think it's one of those things. They've lost 5 straight or whatever it is to the U.S. in gold medal games. I just think it's an anomaly to some degree. I think, the U.S. they've made a lot of strides, with their development with young players and things like that. But, I also look at, I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with, like Canada. I think the other thing too, when I look at it, the Americans are, Canada's like if you look at, baseball, for example, everybody wants to beat the Yankees. Well, in international hockey, everybody wants to beat Canada. And so I think when it comes down to some of this, especially in junior, the Americans just have that extra level that Canada can't seem to find because we're so used to being on top of the mountain and we're used to being the hunted all the time. And I think there's a little bit more motivation for the Americans in that dressing room before every game. It's like, hey, this is Canada. If you want to be the best, you got to beat these guys. Where Canada really doesn't have that, other than, if you want to stay on top of the mountain, you got to make sure you win every game. And ultimately, you lose that one gold medal game and it's doom and gloom. I don't see it that way. I just think it's just one of those weird things. I can't really explain it. I think Ryan's onto some, with chemistry. I think that, if you go back over the 5 years that we've lost, there's some of that. I don't necessarily buy chemistry as a factor this particular year.
Gonna ask my D-men. The barrel comes out for the final picture. To be the best, you got to beat the best. That barrel was there. Harry, what did you feel about the whole tournament and seeing that last picture with a Team Canada logo on a garbage can?
Well, I mean, I read all the stories about it. I mean, from a coach, I mean, I get it's a great story and that's what they use for motivation. I think you don't have to bring it on the ice. I mean, I'm not going to be one of those guys who's going to complain about it. It was what they used for motivation. I think they knew what it would come across and what it would, what people would assume. But at the end of the day, you know what? If we had just beat them, then it wouldn't have been an issue. So, you know what? To the victor goes to spoil. Whatever you want to do to celebrate. At the end of the day, that's it's old news. I don't think we should really whine and complain about it. We've won enough. I don't know if we've ever done anything like that. I mean, maybe that just sets up for us to do something in the future. But talking about, just the first bit there, it's funny, like Canada puts themselves on this pedestal. It's like Mike said, we don't just have to win, we have to dominate. And, as Zigra said before the game, well, they weren't really tested. And, everybody was so like, that's so offensive to say, but it's true. Like there was no adversity. Could you imagine? They were being compared to the best team of all time before they'd even won. Could you imagine a situation where Canada, after the round robin, is the 4th seed, and they work their way and they're gritty and they battle and they win the gold medal game? Would any of us be okay with that? It's as if they don't go 7-0, it doesn't mean anything. So I think if we take a step back and realize, hey, you know what? Yeah, the objective of the tournament is to win. They don't have to look too far. And it's like, will this team go 7-0? Will this team be better than Grand Forks before the year even starts? 21 first-round draft picks. It's, I think it's, as a country, we put the cart, ahead of the horse, and it's just win the tournament. It doesn't really matter, you go 15-0 to 2-0 to whatever, and it's like, who cares? We're just trying to win the tournament. And I think going into that, game, the pressure is always more on Canada. They feel the weight of the country, whereas the U.S., yeah, it means a lot to the players, but they're not getting the same national media coverage. Were they being compared to the greatest USA team of all time? Do any of us even know what the greatest USA team is? So it's one of those things that I think Canada, yeah, we take a lot of pride in hockey. It's kind of our thing. But realistically, if we were all coaches ourselves, what would we be telling the guys? Hey, just one game at a time. Don't worry about this. But I know in years past, they take the phones away from the guys so that there's none of that outside pressure. I don't think they did that this year because that was probably the only thing these guys had to keep their sanity in quarantine. But yeah, I think that creeped into them big time. And then you get that first goal against you, and it's like, oh my gosh, not only are we down, but this is the first 5-on-5 goal we let against us. Well, who cares? The fact that they're even talking about that stat, it plays into the kid's head because it's like their goal is to, well, we're not even going to get scored on 5-on-5. Let's make that our mission. Well, 10 minutes in the game, you get scored on, and you feel like you lost because you didn't accomplish that goal. No, just win the game. So I think it's it was a mental thing. I know it's not even an excuse. I think, that was a weakness for Canada. We think we're better, rightfully so, but, you still have to win the game to be considered the best of all time. So,
I think the other thing that I would add just really quick is, and no one really talked about it, but the U.S., I believe they lost their first game. They won 6 in a row to close out the tournament and had 3 shutouts. They weren't that bad. They're a pretty good hockey team too.
I mean, they finished first in the pool on the other side. Yeah, they lost to the Russians in that first game. And, I mean, a bit of a resilient, 1A, 1B goaltender. And Spencer played really well. Sean, you've been bumped up to the right wing. Finish us off here.
I was going to say, typical of Canada from a media standpoint, we're talking about this tournament. We have a fantastic tournament, go 6-0 to start, lose the last game, and all of a sudden we're going to analyze what's wrong with Canadian hockey, right? Like they'll probably have a forum about it and dig down into banning European goalies again. It's one game against another great team, and if you look at it, what if we'd scored first, right? And then we get a chance to lock them down. Totally different hockey game. They get the first goal, and they get a little bit of room to clamp down. They do a fantastic job of it, play one of the best defensive efforts that I've seen in a long time. And they were full value to the victory. But, if you look at a single elimination tournament, at any time you can lose a game. Even the 1992-93 Ottawa Senators won a few hockey games, and they were never the better team on the ice. I'll promise you that. I watched that team enough. They were horrendous. So things happen. And if you look at the tournament as a whole, Nate Sager, who used to write for Yahoo Sports, did some deep dive on the results in the World Juniors over the last 30 years. No surprise, when you average it all together, Canada by far has the best, most consistent results. But in a single elimination tournament, are you going to win every gold medal game? No. Now, you do mention, though, 5 times in a row you lost to the Americans. So why them specifically? One, as mentioned at the beginning by Ryan, that's a team that plays together in the under-17 group for a full season. So, yeah, there is a little bit of innate chemistry that comes with that. 2, the Americans are great. And 3, sometimes when a team's beat you a few times in a row, even if you weren't on those other teams, they get in your head a little. Again, I referenced the Senators. I remember those great Ottawa teams from the late 90s, early 2000s could beat anybody except the Maple Leafs. And those teams changed, and the players that were on them changed. But for some reason, when you see that jersey across the ice, it gets in your mind a little bit. Oh, we haven't beat them in a while. So there's a lot of things that could happen, but it's one game. If you put those teams out there in a best-of-7, you'd have 7 fantastic games, and it would probably go back and forth because they're both fantastic, deep, skilled hockey teams, and I'm not too worried about Canadian hockey at all after watching the display they put on in the rest of the tournament. You lost one.
Thing, that I would throw, it didn't happen this year, but in other years I see some things and I scratch my head. Like, I think we would be, I remember the year Jake Virtanen was sent back by Vancouver, and watching Kelly McCrimmon and Dave Lowry utilize Virtanen, who wasn't having a very good tournament, and knowing those two coaches, there had to have been some Vancouver pulling the strings behind the scenes to make sure that Virtanen got the ice time that he got. So I think that there's some of that goes on. There's been times I remember one year, we needed a goal, late in the third period. We pulled our goalie, and Chris Bigross, who hadn't played in 2 games, is the 6th guy that we throw on the ice. Like, we do some really weird things sometimes, and I feel that, the odd time it can be out of arrogance because we know that we're so good. So we'll, and I think, not to blame coaches, but sometimes I watch and I think, like, you're overthinking the project here. Like, it's not rocket science. Like a couple of years, Sean might remember, Tyler Steenbergen, who's like one of the most dangerous hockey players at the junior level in the entire world. But because he wasn't a first-round draft pick, he wasn't put in the position that, those of us that watch junior hockey know darn well he should have been in and probably would have excelled.
Well, and that's one thing about Canada's history with World Junior rosters. They have a tendency to be a little too beholden to whether or not a guy had been in the program until that tournament. Was he on the under-17 team? Was he on the under-18 team? Well, guess what? Teenagers develop at a different rate. So if he wasn't there at 16 and all of a sudden he's the best player in the world at 19, who cares? Now, Steenbergen, though, is an argument for the other side of that equation. Why is Bigross on the ice? Well, Steenbergen hardly played the whole tournament, and then the guy, I can't remember who it was playing on one of the lines, was having kind of an off night, so he gets bumped up, and then he scores the gold medal winning goal. Hadn't played almost the entire tournament, but found a way to contribute at the end. It's such a small sample size, and we in Canada analyze these tournaments to death when you're talking about 6-7 games. Anything can happen in such a short period of time. We're generally good. When we start having 4th and 5th place finishes in consecutive years, then maybe we can worry. But for the most part, we know Canada's going to be there, and some other teams are going to win sometimes.
For 95% of the time, we're usually in that medal round. We've been very strong, like you said. The winner-take-alls against the Americans, we don't match up for some strange reason, whether it be chemistry, whether it be the know-how, whether it be just the fact that they've got an extra chip on their soldiers, regardless. You bring up
the next 5, though, right? Like, it's,
you bring up the program, and I think sticking with one goaltender this year, who was off the radar for so many years, and it just proves a point that, like you said, players mature, and some players don't just show up; they just show up for a game. Quentin Byfield, we'll leave it at that. We'll take a quick water break as Mike takes a grin. We'll get Ryan Wood back in here. Let's see what position he's going to play next. Oh, he's playing the lefty. We'll be back with second period action here on the Coaches Parlay. Thanks for welcoming us back here to second period action here on Coaches Parlay. We had to bump up Sean Mullen because he had a better connection, so he's playing the right wing. And I think what we found out throughout the course of the last 7 episodes, Ryan's more a defensive kind of guy. He likes the shots from the blue line. So that's why we did the quick switch there. Stackhouse, we're going to start with you on this second period. The window's getting smaller for a return to hockey amateur-wise. We're looking at, middle January already. Here in the province of Manitoba, we're getting an announcement next week on the 22nd. We're still stuck in code red. It might go to orange. It might go to yellow. The bottom line is, until you go to yellow, you're not going to see competitive action. Do we even worry about trying to start seasons this late in the wintertime, or should we focus on the fall and start focusing on training programs in the spring?
Why did you start with me on this one? You know that the other guys aren't even.
I had to. Ryan begged me.
Look, I don't know what we're going to do. This is what I know. Minot is playing a game this weekend in front of 1,000 fans. 2 hours away, ASTV can't even put 6 kids on the ice. That's what I know. And look, it's safe. I'm sorry, but it's safe. And I can sit here and I can scream all I want, but governments are going to do what governments are going to do. I think at the moment, when you look at all the hockey playing countries in the world, we're the only one not playing anything. And to go back to the last topic a little bit about junior hockey, and I'm getting way ahead of things right now, but you look at that special player that Regina is supposed to have in Bedard. Why would he ever come back here at this point? Why? There's no reason for him to we don't want to play bad enough. We just don't. If you look at all the restrictions that have been put into place, the restrictions that we have, whether they're, not, and I'm not talking hockey, I'm talking society restrictions. They've been put into place because people have yelled and screamed loud enough to be put into place. If you look at other places where they are playing hockey and they are doing sports, you look at football, okay? Like they almost didn't have a university football season. The only reason why they did is because Justin Fields and a few of the other guys really lobbied hard and yelled and screamed and they played. Well, we don't have anybody here yelling and screaming to play hockey. And because we don't, it's easy for governments to ignore them and we don't play. Now, I've got my rant out of the way. I think what's likely to happen is senior hockey and rec hockey doesn't happen at all. I think that's the sacrificial lamb. I think minor hockey is probably going to get the go-ahead. We're going to have to do something silly like, parents put skates on the kids in the vehicle and you walk from the parking lot into the rink and nobody's allowed to watch. Now, for little kid hockey, is that necessarily a bad thing? We heard Harry talk in previous episodes that he loves, coaching with no parents in the stands. And then when you get into things like junior A and major junior, they're going to have decisions to make. I believe they can't play with no fans. Now, I don't even think like in the Western Hockey League, and Sean can speak to this, but I don't see any way they can play at all unless they do some form of a bubble. And then even then you're looking at 24 games. People are losing a lot of money. And it's just, for me, it's sad because there's 2,300 fans watching a USHL game in Nebraska the other night. There's 1,800 fans in Aberdeen, South Dakota watching a North American Hockey League game. I mentioned there's going to be 1,000 in Minot, and we can't put 6 kids on the ice. It's unbelievable and unnecessary punishment of youth in our country. It's sad.
Sean, let's hear your words on this. Let's see how you're following up, because, as memory serves me right, Dub said they're going to try to put a season together, and that's all they said. They didn't mention a start date, how, when, if, by, and whom. So
I'm always like, call me, accuse me of being a fence sitter. I'm always hesitant to have a strong opinion on this COVID stuff because I'm not knowledgeable enough on what and why we do these restrictions. So, I can say what I feel, but it doesn't necessarily have any weight behind it. What I would say, like, my first instinct to devil's advocate the U.S. as a counterexample is that their handling of COVID has been universally declared as incompetent. So to say what are they doing versus what we're doing, I don't know if that's a great comparison. Would I love to see hockey? Of course I would. One thing I don't understand is the certainty the Western Hockey League continues to speak with about their season. They've now said 3 different times, we will play, we will play. The January start date, at one point they publicly said, this is not speculation, we're going to play. And Mike's right. You're in the hands of the government. You can't decide what you're going to do. So you can scream until you're blue in the face, we're going to play, we're going to play, we're going to play. And by the time the mid-February or late February date comes that they're going to play their 24-game season, if you're still not allowed to have sports, they're not going to get an exception. Now, you look at the NHL playing right now, and if you're in these other leagues and you're being told you're not allowed to have players on the ice, it does kind of taste a little bit sour, I would think, because it's not like the NHL has fans or anything, but we can't have hockey players on the ice without fans. But at the big level, with the money on, at stake, the big pros are able to. I'm sure for some people that kind of stinks. If they're allowed to be on the ice skating around, why can't the minor hockey and junior hockey folks? Can the Western Hockey League have a season without fans? They can if they're committed to losing a ton of money. That's one thing. The other part of it is there might be something that we don't know. Because when they came out the other day and said they're going to have a 24-game season, they have a plan in place, there may be some bubbling, the American teams may come up into Canada, knowing that they'd said over and over in the fall they could not play without the ability to have some fans, it made me think the certainty they're speaking with at this point made me think there's got to be something they're not telling us that makes them a little more comfortable with the financial realities of this, because they're not all billionaire owners in the Western Hockey League. There's some community-owned teams. There's some owners that, have to break even in order to run their franchises. So they can't just go out there and stick a bunch of kids in hotel rooms for 2 months and pay for their equipment and pay for the staff without any revenue coming in. I don't know where that money is coming from, but there's got to be some source of revenue that we're not aware of that gives them the confidence they can play.
I think the other thing too, just to finish up on that, handle well or be incompetent, whatever you want to call it. North Dakota is down around 100 cases a day now, which is less than what we're seeing in all the prairie provinces.
For sure.
So, again, for me, it just comes down to, and as badly as you can say that they've handled it, from what I can see, no teenage athletes in the States have died. No professional athletes anywhere have died. And we can talk about grandmas till we're blue in the face, but the reality is that the onus is on each and every one of us to be self-responsible and look after our own loved ones. I mean, I Harry and Ryan and Theo and Sean, you're nice guys, but with all due respect, I don't know who your vulnerable loved ones are. They're in better shape if you're protecting them as opposed to me protecting them when I don't even know who they are. I'm worried about my loved ones. My loved ones just happen to be young. They should be playing sports. There's no reason why they can't be. And it's ridiculous. And I think the time has come for governments to say why 1,000 fans can go to a hockey game and Minot, 2 hours north, Estevan can't put 6 guys on the ice. I think we're owed an explanation on that.
Ryan, we've poked the bear. He's spoken twice. Before we get to Harry, because I know you and I are sitting in the same province, or will be in the same province shortly. Ryan, talk about, I don't want to say incompetent leaders or health orders or what have you, but Ontario is they're just signing warrants to say, you know what, We're not allowing any type of fun at all on the rink.
Unless you're a member of parliament, then you can do whatever you want.
Well, and you can go travel and do what you want. Yes, of course. Ryan, what's your take on? Do you think it's worthwhile for this OHL and all these minor programs to, or is they just kick the can and say let's bygones be bygones and let's wait for the spring?
I don't think that there's going to be a Tier 2 Junior A season. If it is, it's going to run into August, because the biggest fear that I think a lot of the Junior A programs here is they've collected fees, and to justify not having to provide refunds, they have to play into August. And in terms of Major Junior, it has been so eerie and quiet about the OHL and any plans or anything. There's been zero talk that's going on about will there be a season or will there not be a season. So the Western Hockey League is very optimistic, but the way that our government is here in Ontario, I mean, we just basically got put into the state of emergency again as of today. So, I mean, we're not supposed to leave our houses for the next 28 days unless you are an essential worker or you need to go get food or prescription. Or so, I mean, to think that there's going to be hockey here in Ontario is it's a pretty tall order as far as I'm concerned. So
they had that announcement.
I think there should be hockey, but the way that our government is here in Ontario, I'm not very optimistic.
They had that announcement where the Quebec curfew, you could go outside for a walk after curfew if you had to walk your pet.
Yep.
And so one wife took her husband out on a leash.
Yep.
They got fined.
The dominatrix people are loving this in Quebec right now. Just put it that way.
Maybe you can take your kid to the rink if they have a leash on. Otherwise,
dress them up like a sheepdog. Whatever you got to do, ball gags included. I'll leave it at that. Harry, January 22nd, we're going to get an announcement here in Manitoba. We've already heard that the Southeast Manitoba Hockey League, the Hanover Taché, both have been considering to canceling their seasons or already have. What are your thoughts on this window, and with you and the MJ and the Winker Flyers having started this season, can you finish what you've already started, do you think?
I hope so. I mean, let's be honest. We know junior economics. If we don't play, I'm out of a job till September, like realistically. So, it affects me. It affects everybody a little bit differently. But I mean, if we're done, then, I gotta find something to do around here. They're not paying me to coach kids during a pandemic who are sitting at home, and I don't feel like stick handling over a Zoom meeting to keep their skills sharp like some guys do. But I hope so. I mean, the MJs, we were the first ones to kind of get started. They've been the only league to make a statement saying, hey, we know these restrictions are going till the 22nd. We're still committed to. So, it definitely gives me optimism that, like Mike was saying, that, nobody's kicking and screaming. The MJ has been pretty firm that, any type of leash they get, they're going to take it, and any type of, restrictions, or if, we can get some kind of exemption, they'll take it. They're not going to try to sit still and, not try to finish this out. So, we have contingency plans. If we get back, there's 28 games that they have scheduled. That's going to be a little bit of a mess. I don't think they put together a schedule yet, but they're saying every team will play 28. If, we can't start that weekend, then it goes to 24, 22. I don't know if they have a drop dead date, but I've heard March 1st would be it. But I mean, in all honesty, the number of kids playing spring hockey grow every year. So who cares if this goes into the end of June? I mean, if you're in an academy, those places, I don't know what they have in their contract in terms of kids, getting reimbursements, but they're there till the end of June anyways, till school's done. I know when I was at the academies after spring break, it was a nightmare when you didn't play games and you felt more like a babysitter and you're just running skill sessions. We were dying to play games just to kind of keep a little, organization to the kids and have them not, run around unless they were playing school sports. So if we start in February and go till the end of end of April, and then, we can get the playoffs done by the end of May, that would feel pretty normal to me. Then you get June, July, and then mid-August, you're kind of getting things back up and going. So knock on wood, it'd be really important for me to get back and, working. So yeah, the window is small, but it definitely affects me, and I'm hoping that we can get playing.
I saw
Harry's got a ring to pay for.
Yeah.
Harry's got a ring to pay for.
Yeah.
He's going down a road that most of us have or haven't done. Congratulations, Harry, on the announcement over the holidays.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We're going to leave it at that because we're going to talk about the players that are going to be playing, and that's the big boys in the NHL here in the third period. So stay with us here on Coaches Parley. All right, boys, time to wrap it up. We got to finish strong. Sticking with the same kind of lineup, Ryan did very well on the back end. So we leave him on the left side. Third period action here, and we're going to talk about the big boys coming up. That is right. The NHL is back this week. 116 days by the time this airs. This should be day 4, I think. Day 3 or day 4 of 116 straight. I'm going to go around my lineup here. I'm going to start with Harry because he's at the back right end. Give me one of your storylines you're following here in this shortened season that you look forward to watching over the next 116 days.
I'm going to take the easy one and just say watching this Canadian division, I think will be fun. It just, unfortunately, I think it's going to almost feel like 2 leagues because the TSN and the Sportsnets are going to spend so much time covering Canadian games every night that I think, you won't hear much of a Dallas Tampa Bay, who's in the same division and they were just in the final, but you probably won't hear much about that. So it's going to be kind of unfortunate. I actually think it's going to feel like 2 different leagues, but I think it's just going to be so jam-packed with these teams playing each other so often that it's just going to, I hate to say it, well, I don't hate to say it, but it's going to feel like old-time hockey a little bit. You're going to have these battles and 4 and 5s against the same team or 4 and 6s. So I think just seeing the rivalries reignite or even new rivalries potentially spark. The unfortunate thing is going back to next year, you might lose it. But for this year, I'm just going to ride the wave of watching these teams play each other 9-10 times. And, it's going to be fun.
All right. Eddie Shore, Toe Blake style from Harry. Ryan, what's your storyline you're looking forward to? I know you're a big Leafs fan. I don't know how many more tools you Leaf fans need other than another goalie, but fill me in on what you'd like to be watching here in the next 3 or 4 months from the big guys.
I'm really excited about the fact that I think the offensive production in the NHL is going to go up. I think with no fans in the stands, I think a lot of these games are going to be, a little more pond hockey-like. And I think there's going to be a lot more offensive chances. I mean, you look at the 2 games already tonight. There's 8 goals in one game, 9 goals in another. I mean, it's great to see the offensive aspect of the game going. And just to clear what you said about Leafs, I'm not a Leaf fan and never will be a Leaf fan. I do live in Ontario, but I am a Winnipeg Jets fan. That's who I cheer for. That's who I like watching. And I just hope that Patrik Laine can pick his lip off the ground and have a season for himself.
Well, I mean, he came out today and said no matter what jersey I wear, I'm playing 110%. But according to any scientist, he can only play 100%. He's in his last year of a contract. Of course, he's going to play his best because the only thing that's going to do well for Laine is him playing well. Whether he stays in a uniform this year or he wants to go somewhere else. If he doesn't play well, his stock goes down. So why would he play like crap? So I think we're all in agreement there. It's just unfortunate that he's lost love for playing in a Jets jersey.
Which sucks. But to flip back to your science analogy, perhaps with the simple science that you just provided, maybe you could be the one providing some COVID relief and COVID discussions that might make Mike a little more happy.
Don't get me started. Let me tell you, my number one comment about COVID testing is if you don't test anybody, there's no positive test results. How about that? 100% of people you don't test means you don't get positive results, right, Mike?
Very Donald Trump. I like
Yeah,
it.
I'm gonna say
So
you're not
I'm still
orange
holding
enough
on
in
this year.
that
I'm still playing the left side.
If you
Trump's
aren't
bad.
sick, why would you? I'll tell you a quick minor pro story that I heard last week because there's not as much scrutiny in the minor pros. There's a player down in one of the teams playing down there. He got a positive virus test. He doesn't have any symptoms at all. His coach told him that he's got 4 days to either show symptoms. If he doesn't show symptoms, you come back and play. And if you don't come back and play after 4 days, you're going home. We're cutting you. So that's how they're handling it down there. And you could say it good or bad, whatever the case may be, but that's what they've decided to do down there. I think for me, the big thing that I'm following is what's going to happen at the end of this year. I can't imagine that the salary cap is going to go anywhere. So what does Patrik Laine think he's going to get? Like, he's going to have to score 40, 45 goals in a 56-game season. And then who actually can fit him under the cap at $10 million or whatever it is that he wants? So that's kind of what I'm going to be watching for is what happens at the end of the year with some of these free agents, and because we are seeing a market correction of sorts, and I don't think he's going to get paid. I do, going back to the first period when we talked about chemistry, I'm a big believer in chemistry. I think when you've got a room that's sour, and Winnipeg has that right now with him, I'd get him out of there, and I'd get him out of there yesterday. And it's not because I don't like him. I love watching him play. I'm a big Jets fan. I'm disappointed at how this has gone, but he would be gone yesterday if he was on my team. And I think the other thing too with Winnipeg, and your viewers probably, a lot of Jet fans that watch it, they need a shakeup. I watch the Jets regularly. They have the same power play. It's 90 to 100 seconds of setting up line A in the Ovechkin spot. They haven't adjusted it for 3 years. They barely changed the lines over the course of 3 years. This Heinola can't even get into the lineup after a standout World Junior tournament. They need a shakeup. They need to probably move one of those top guys. Laine is as good as any to move because it actually forces them to change their power play. It forces them to change their top six. And frankly, they become too easy to play against. When they were, I used to make fun of guys like Chris Thorburn and sandpaper guys like that, but they were hard to play against when they had Andrew Ladd and Chris Thorburn and Michael Frolik and Joel Armia. Well, they're not hard to play against anymore. They're very easy, very, very soft, and they need a shakeup. And so they may have to do it.
Comes back. We don't know, right? And I mean, you had a taxi squad that has Dylan Sandberg on it, and Ville Heinola could be there for sure as well. We talk about being a sour dressing room. We'll switch sports just for a quick sec and bring up the Houston Rockets, who earlier this week just got rid of James Harden. And their Brooklyn Nets got a massive headache and migraines in front of them. But we'll digress because this is a hockey show, Sean. And
they already had another one on that team with Irving.
Two headaches. That's
one dressing room.
But nobody knows where he is. Like, he was spreading sage all over the floor, and then he kind of disappeared. So they I don't know.
One thing that hockey has going for it over basketball in COVID is the size of the roster and then the taxi squads they have. You lose a couple guys, you should still be able to play. Basketball is at real risk of, it starts to spread throughout that league. Get enough guys out, all of a sudden you can't play. So the NHL should have more luck getting a season in, I would think, under those circumstances. Now, Mike mentioned the salary cap issue. This has nothing to do with how the year is going to go this year. But when you're looking at a couple of the Canadian teams in particular, when you give out that big money long-term contract, like a McDavid, Draisaitl, Marner, Tavares, Matthews, those guys, you do that realizing, well, yeah, it takes up a lot of my cap now, but in 2, 3, 4 years, as the cap goes up and goes up and goes up and goes up, that number's not so bad. I'll have more room then to play with. That is not happening anytime soon. The revenue is non-existent this year, last year, this year, maybe next. So if you're the Maple Leafs and the Oilers, that long-term plan just got kicked right in the where. So they're going to have to get awfully creative in terms of how they build their rosters over the next few years. The Canadian division is what I'm also focused on. I love seeing the young guys make the jump. I think that's fun. I look forward to seeing the Battle of Alberta as many times as we're going to get to see it this year, and see if maybe Tkachuk and and the Oilers end up killing each other by the time it's done. Cash into Tkachuk, like they could have a best of 8 series battling each other head to head this year. So we'll see what that's like. I would like to see. It's been so long since Canadian teams had anything to celebrate that if the playoffs work the way that the divisions work, whoever comes out of that division maybe should have some kind of a banner or a trophy or something just to be Canada's champion, because we haven't had any other trophy to celebrate since '93. Otherwise, I mean, I'm happy to the pros back. It took me a while to get excited about it, and it still is one of those sports for me that when you watch without real crowd noise, it takes a lot of the emotion out of it. I don't know why. I can watch football all day without a crowd, and it didn't bother me at all. Basketball is the same. Hockey without a crowd, it just something's off for me.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to have back. I'm glad to have lots to watch, and I think it's the one thing I can say about the NHL since the addition of the salary cap. It's really, really, really hard to build a balanced team because just the nature of the salary structures and how quickly guys are getting paid, the young guys are getting paid, you cannot have strength in every department of a team. Tampa Bay last year maybe is the lone example. So that makes the league really, really unpredictable. And that's exciting. It's probably, tear your hair out kind of situation for managers, but from a fan, there's probably 22, 23 teams that could realistically win the Stanley Cup this year. And so that makes it interesting to watch.
I think that's the parity. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to, because you look at all these 4 divisions and how they're put together. You have potentially 16 teams that could win the Stanley Cup this year. And we're not even talking about injury. We're not even talking about the fact that it says 56 compared to an 82-game season.
Yeah.
It's going to be such an intriguing 116 days to see how this is all going to follow through. I want to end this real quick, gentlemen, for a great show. Right off the hop, without watching any of these games so far, can you pick an NHL Stanley Cup winner? Can you go on a limb and pick one team? Because I will. And I'm going to pick, unfortunately, here comes the drum roll. Colorado Avalanche, done. Who else you taking?
Stole my thunder.
Yeah, if they get a goalie, I pick Colorado. If not, I go back with Tampa.
You going Tampa without Cooch?
No, if Colorado doesn't get a goalie at the depth to finish off the year, I'm going to go with Tampa.
Okay. The Coochless Lightning. How about you, Sean?
While he's thinking about it, I'm gonna pick my second favorite team.
The Jets?
Philadelphia.
Nolan Patrick. He's back in the lineup.
Scored tonight.
And he scored on Wednesday. That's right. 6 Flyers scored on Wednesday.
They had 11 forwards get points. They've got a really good goalie for a change. They're deep everywhere. And I know they've shown interest in Laine in the past. I think there's a deal there to be made. I think Winnipeg people would be very happy. Travis Konechny is a real pain in the you-know-what to play against. He can slide right into the second line right wing.
And Voracek might be on his way out, so there's a trade chip there.
Oh, now we're playing speculators. We'll leave that to next time. Ryan, you got a winner for me?
I'm going to go with the Vegas Golden Knights.
VKG. Ryan Reeves, good friend of the show. I like the pick. And also Stoner, first captain, picked by the Golden Knights earlier from Brandon. Good call, Winnipegger as well. Okay, Sean.
I was going to say the same thing because a lot of people, and the group of you from Manitoba would know this, a lot of people have lost a lot of money betting against Kelly McCrimmon. The guy who knows and finds a way to win.
Knows that.
Yeah. And for him to have found a way with the cap crunch they had to land Pietrangelo, like that's just Kelly McCrimmon to a T. He wanted something. He found a way to get it. And they had a weird year last year, Vegas, coming off their first fantastic season. But the talent there, quite a few that underachieved, that don't underachieve for long. they're strong in almost every aspect. The Fleury thing's a little bit weird, and I'm sure they'd rather not have $7.5 million on the cap for him and been able to use it on something else. But that's a dynamic team that has a roster full of guys who've been to a final. And of all the teams that are going to be miserable because they can't go out and they can't do anything, those guys get to live in Las Vegas. So the happiness factor is on their side too. So I would pick them. I'm with Ryan.
So we got Philly, we got Vegas, we got Colorado. Gentlemen, I wait a little while until we do this again because we definitely turned some stones, and there are some great conversations to be had here in the near future. So I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. Let's get back to the rinks. Let's get back to the tubes and watch some good hockey. And thank you for spending some time with me today. Saturday night, Coaches Parley. We're done. We're through. Thanks for watching. Say goodbye, everybody. I like the lineup. Good scoring line one. I'm glad Ryan fit well on the left side. Stakos, we're going to keep you at center ice if we can. Bye-bye.